Strazian. I want to welcome you to Passive Wrappings. Today, we're outside the Randolph Intergenerational Community Center, and they are hosting the very first Randolph Public Schools district-wide art show. So we're going to go inside, we're going to take a look at the art and see what's happening. I'm here with Kim Fancher-Kelly, who is a teacher at Randolph High, but also co-chair of the art department for Randolph Public Schools.
Yes, that's me.
So you were one of the organizers of this show here today.
Michelle and I were approached by Dr. Burke and asked if we've ever done something like this, and we said no, and she's like, it would be really exciting if you did. And we said, okay, we'll try. So here we are.
So today, we're showing work from students that have quite an age range. What is the age range of the artists that we're displaying work from today?
The elementary schools go down to pre-K, and we go up to 12th grade at the high school.
And the name of this show is?
I think we're just calling it the Randolph Public Schools All-District Art Show.
Well, good. That's a fitting name. So let's talk about the work that you have here right now.
Yeah.
This is work from high school students.
This is, yes. This particular section right here is from some of the advanced art kids. They take art for a full year.
So when you're at the advanced high school level, what are some of the learning outcomes that you focus on?
Ideally, they will come to me already knowing how to shade, how to apply colors, how to make selections of colors, and use it to express themselves more personally instead of just following the directions for a project.
So what are some of the different techniques that you're teaching them at this level?
At the advanced art level, we talk a little bit more about how to blend their colors, how to mix their own colors with acrylic paints or watercolors, how to achieve special effects like in the background of the owl, how to make it look like there's stars in the sky, how to get the clouds to look more cloud-like and less cartoon-like. When they're shading with pencil, how to make it so that you don't see the pencil direction, you don't see the lines that you're using to shade. Maybe exploring things that they didn't get as much experience with, like maybe they wanted to use oil pastels or chalk pastels or charcoal a little bit more, and giving them the chance to do that because they feel confident with it.
So at this level, you have more freedom with the mediums that you want to use?
Usually I'll give them a couple of choices of materials that they could choose from to complete an assignment.
So obviously the work that we have here today has to be two-dimensional so you can display it. Do you do any three-dimensional kind of work?
We do have some 3D work. Actually, the name images that are down here, they were exploring bas-relief in sculpture class, so it has to be flat on the back and 3D from into space.
And so is this something that at the advanced level that they all do, or is this something at the lower level that they all do?
So sculpture class is open to grades 10, 11, 12. It's only a half-year class. If they wanted to, they could take it a second time and get an honors credit for it. So if they do choose to take it at the honors level, I have the materials out and say, okay, this is the material, you do what you want to do. This is what they're doing in the sculpture class, but you can explore with it and make something of your own. Or if you want to do the project again and try it a different way, then you're open to do that.
How many students go on to that elective level?
In sculpture class this year, I had 5 advanced sculpture kids out of the 40 kids that I had in sculpture.
So at that level, what are some of the major learning challenges that they have to overcome that you found?
In sculpture class or in any of the art classes?
We can talk about any of the art classes. Okay. I was transitioning, of course, from the sculpture class because we were just talking about it, but really knowing what the challenges are at any level would actually be helpful for people who may not be familiar with a lot of those classes.
So the kids that choose to take maybe Art 2, Art 3, Art 4, some of them are interested in art, some of them want to pursue it. We have a girl that's going to Mass Art this year. We have another girl that's going to Leslie this year. We have a couple of other girls that want to minor in art in addition to whatever their major is. then we want to make sure that they have a variety of experiences, so when they go off to college, they're prepared for whatever is kind of thrown at them. We have other kids that just enjoy art. They're maybe never going to do anything more with it other than what they do in my class, but that's okay. They enjoy it and they like expressing themselves, so we let them. It's good.
So, because you're chair of the department, is there ideally, is there a system that the students should be moving through as they get from the lower levels up to these really advanced levels that you're teaching at the high school level?
So ideally, they'll have art every year. That would be the ideal. It's kind of in around middle school, things get a little wonky right now where the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade are getting mixed together. We're hoping to rectify that and get them separated out better so that Ms. McCabe is better able to get them through the curriculum that should be taught for their age level instead of, oh, okay, so you haven't had art this year, but you have, and now you're all together. So what can I do that you haven't done before but will help you further along with your art? At the high school level, it's a little more fluid. They have to have one fine art credit to graduate. They can either do that through art class or music class. Some of them will take a little bit of both. Some will only take art, some will only take music. In art, they can do a half year of intro to art, and they might decide, that's good, I'm going to go take a music credit. They might decide to continue on and take a half year of sculpture, or a half year of mixed media, a half year of painting. Or they might decide, hey, I really like that half year of intro to art. I want to take a full year of art next year and transition into art 1. If they do the full year of art 1 and they pass it, then they can take a full year of art 2, full year of art 3, full year of art 4, depending on what year they take art 1.
Now, one thing that I think a lot of people who don't have an arts background probably want to know is, what are the major outcomes that you really think that students gain when they're able to go through these different levels in the visual arts?
Ideally, what I want them to be able to do, if nothing else, is not copy and paste things to get their work done for other classes. So if they have to do a poster for a science class, they have to do a project for Spanish class, ideally I would like them to be drawing the images that they put on their posters instead of printing it off and pasting it on. Other than that, I would like them to find enjoyment in it, find a way to express themselves, maybe find a use for it somewhere along the way, whether it's when they have kids of their own and they have to help them with projects, or they need to take an elective in college and it's something that they feel comfortable doing or they're familiar with.
Now, we're seeing a lot of different types of work up here.
Yeah.
How is it that you're organizing these different pieces?
So this section down here is all advanced art stuff. And when you go this way, you've got the sculpture, bas-relief projects. And as you move that way, it's more intro to art with a couple of art 1 items mixed in, and commercial art. There's commercial art in this section right here. So I kind of tried to group it by what projects the students were working on at the time. So you'll see similar stuff together. So hopefully somebody that hasn't been to our class or hasn't taken the class could kind of see that they're somewhat related, even though they look entirely different from each other.
So how long will this show be up here at the Randolph Community Intergenerational Center?
The high school stuff and middle school work will be up from today until next Friday, May 24th, because we have to get work back to kids that are off and running, being seniors and finishing up with school. The elementary work is supposed to stay up through the summer.
All right, well, I want to thank you for giving us a chance to look at all this work here today. And is there anything else as the organizer that you would want any of the people watching at home to know?
I hope you come down and enjoy the work and have positive things to say, and yeah, support your kids taking art classes.
So now I'm here with Katie McCabe, who teaches at the Randolph Community Middle School. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And teaching there, what is the typical age of the students there, just so people who don't have kids, haven't been there in a while, can be reminded?
The students there are in grades 6 through 8, and I see all 3 grades for a half-year course. So I'll have students in terms 1 and 2, and then another group of students in terms 3 and 4.
All right, so in your course, what are the things that you try to focus on when you're teaching them the arts?
At the middle school, we cover almost everything. So I cover drawing, painting, collage. We'll do some ceramic clay, and we do plaster sculptures. We'll do all kinds of things. So I try to cover as much as I can.
What do you think are the most important learning outcomes for students that age when they're approaching the visual arts?
What I would like to see my students accomplish during their time with me is for them to feel a sense of accomplishment, to feel pride in their work, to feel that they can do anything as long as they try, and that the results aren't always as important as the process in which they learned it.
And how many of the students do you think really excel in the things that you're trying to teach them and understand those sort of deeper elements that really they're learning through producing that work?
I would say all of them. I feel like I have a very high success rate in terms of my student satisfaction, in terms of their personal success and their personal growth. So, I mean, I might be bragging, but I think I do a great job in terms of helping reach those students find that understanding in themselves.
Well, let's talk about some of the work that's up here on the walls behind us. You can pick which ones you really think you want to highlight, some of the things that your students have been learning recently.
How do I pick? So this project right here behind us, this was 1 point perspective, and this was a very technical drawing process where the students practiced for about 2 weeks on the basic skills on using a ruler, using a T-square, using a vanishing point to create the illusion of 3D perspective. And students then were able to pick the scene that they wanted to pick, and then we used colored pencil techniques to develop that further sense of 3 dimensions through shading and value. So for me, it's a joy to see these works as they're making them, and then their satisfaction when they say, "Oh, you hung it up, oh my gosh." So that's the joy for me. But seeing their process and seeing these individual unique touches in terms of their personality, their interests, that's what I love, where it's not something that I picked, it's something that they picked.
Yeah, it's interesting when you lay it out that way to see the progression from learning those fundamentals into doing this work that's much more expressive of who they want to be as artists.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering, how many different mediums are you actually displaying here today? Because I know you're somewhat limited in the way that you're actually showing them.
Yeah, so I couldn't display any of our 3-dimensional sculptures just because of the lack of the space for those. So we do have a lot of drawings, but down here you can see that there are some works, some 3-dimensional collage works that we did with origami folding techniques. And we talked about symmetry and composition and color schemes, and so they had to arrange a very specific type of composition using origami techniques. I've got some paintings over here with silhouettes and temperas where we were practicing painting techniques and gradients and blending colors, so some fundamental painting techniques. I've got some sewing projects. We do embroidery, which is a favorite, and unfortunately a lot of students take them with them. They don't want me to hold on to them. They want to take them home right away. So this is one of my favorite projects, and it's kind of a surprise project for a lot of students that they don't think they're going to like it at first, but then they love it. We do some metal embossing, and we did just there should be some smaller drawings. So they were able to pick drawing materials of their choice. So they experimented with a wide variety of materials between chalk pastel, oil pastel, pencil, marker. What else did we do? There's all kinds of things over there. So they were able to pick the topic and the technique and the materials. So it's very student driven. It's very much their own choice in what they want to create. So I try to keep it student choice centered.
So for a lot of people who haven't had any training in the arts, a lot of times they don't see what the value really is. And so what do you think is the main value that you bring to the students when they learn this kind of work? Because I already know a lot of what it is,
right.
But for people who really haven't had that training, what would you say to them? How would you explain it?
So what I do say to my students, and a lot of people who ask me that question, is, do I want people to be able to look at art throughout their entire life after they leave me and appreciate the value of it? Yes. I want my students to be able to see, their artwork and feel proud that they can make things and know that they have those skills. But I also say no one is going to stop you on the street and say, how do you mix blue, or how do you mix green, or how do you do metal embossing? That's never going to happen. What is going to happen, though, is that you're going to have to try to figure out how to do stuff that you don't know how to do. You're going to have to persevere. You're going to have to learn a certain process to achieve a specific outcome. And that, to me, is the more valuable overarching lesson that art can teach any student at any age. This is every art teacher's dream, to have an opportunity to show off their work.
So I'm here with Amy Collins, who's a art teacher at Lyons Elementary School.
Hi.
So here today we have some of your students' work, is that correct?
That's right. I teach kindergarten through 5th grade.
And at that age, what is it that you actually teach them in terms of the arts?
So we start with learning about the elements and principles of design, like form, line, shape, primary and secondary colors. And we go from there to 5th grade, where it gets a little bit more complicated.
How does it get more complicated when you get to the 5th grade level?
We start to design 3-dimensional objects on 2-dimensional surfaces, and we use a lot of shading, and we work with tone and space and things like that.
So that's a lot of the basic fundamentals of what you need in any sort of visual art. And we can see in some of the work behind us. Would you like to point out some of the teaching techniques that you've used?
Sure. So here is a mixed up fish by a kindergarten student, and this is a mixed media where it's ripped paper, and you can see here she also used some crayon and another form of ripped paper on the side to develop this undersea creature. And the same idea for down here, with the students made a monkey, a mixed up monkey, where he thought of different kinds of animals and put it all together in one with ripped paper. And we worked with color, primary, secondary colors, and we talk a lot about that.
So what do you think is the biggest benefit that this kind of work brings to students and the overall learning experience that they're having at that age?
Everybody leaves art class feeling good, whether or not they like their artwork. That's my biggest goal. I want them to feel good about themselves and be happy and share it with the world.
It's interesting to see, even at this early age, a lot of the collage work is really interesting, I think. I think a lot of the texture to it is really interesting. So I don't think that's critique is something that you really focus a lot on at that age, but I think that there's a lot of interesting things that can happen, particularly when you're sort of new to a form and you don't know a lot of those rules and you're just learning them for the first time.
Yeah, we do critique work, but we don't really call it critique in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
But we do hold it up and we talk about it. We talk about what we would like to fix, what we could add onto it, and our favorite parts about our friends' work.
I'm here with Nina Atta of Martin E. Young Elementary. And what work are you putting up here today?
We are putting up work from all students at the Young, different work for different grade levels, some different materials as well, things that they've been working on that we wanted to show off to the community.
So which grade levels do we have displayed in the show?
The Young School is kindergarten through the 5th grade, so there'll be kindergarten through 5th grade art.
Can you explain some of the differences that happen in the program as they advance from kindergarten through to the 5th grade? Because developmentally, there's a wide range there.
Yes, absolutely. We began a lot of kindergarten with experimentation with different materials, exploring paint, exploring clay, exploring collage, cutting, some of the sort of more fine motor skills like cutting, gluing, holding a pencil, holding a marker, different paint brush, how to hold a paintbrush, how to manipulate paint a little bit under control, being in a classroom setting. And then sort of progress from there more as we get to the 5th grade. It's more them deciding on their subject matter in my room, but within certain skills that I want them to sort of achieve or within certain content I want to cover, but giving them a lot more freedom to do that.
So what are some of the major learning outcomes that you want them to achieve at these different grade levels? Particularly, as you get to the end of there, you really want them to explore their own sort of vision as artists, you've mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. Their own vision, their own motivation, like what motivates them, talking about art not only as something beautiful and interesting to look at, but sometimes it has something to say. Sometimes art can be like an expression of something that is sort of not part of our daily life or is part of our daily life. Craftsmanship is really important, like doing things on purpose for a reason, being purposeful about your work, sort of thinking about work in that way. Sometimes your work is to ask a question. So thinking about the purpose of the work and then how can they achieve that purpose a lot more sort of as a self-directed artist, I think, you know? So you're not always going to have somebody telling you what to do. So 5th grade, I start to get them in that mindset, or I hope I do.
So why don't you tell us about some of the work that's actually up behind us right now?
Sure. We have work from, right now, these are kindergarten self-portraits, and we called it I Am an Artist. And so they were just trying to be as detailed as they could with their drawings, and then created a background, and the backgrounds could be representational, or they could just be more colorful and abstract, and sort of about the color and filling up their paper with different textures, patterns. Some of them stayed with a color theme, some of them used many colors, and again, that was kindergarten. Next to them are now almost all up 1st grade projects inspired by Eric Carle. You know, so we painted paper, we added texture, we let it dry, cutting into different shapes, thinking about shapes to create an animal or a bug, and they could choose their animal or bug, thinking a little bit about setting and habitat and how to include that, and then the sort of collage process.
Mm-hmm. One thing I find interesting, even looking at the kindergarten level, is you already see this control over color and this control over the creating of a texture using these really simple methods.
Yeah.
And so what is, a lot of the times people who don't come from an arts background don't know what some of the benefits of this kind of education can be. What would you tell those sort of people as far as what the major learning outcomes for students at this age are when they're studying the arts?
Sure. That's a loaded question. That
It is. It is. That's why I asked it.
yeah, it's a really important one, and it fuels like what we as art teachers really believe in and what we do every day. On multiple levels, it's important. It's, I believe, important for students academically because it's allowing them to use another part of their brain to make problem-solving decisions, to connect what they are thinking about to how it is becoming, like what does that look like as a visual, so from one mode to another mode, how we take in the world around us, like what signs look like, what signs mean, from art to billboards to advertisements to magazines to things on your phone. Just the world is so visual, so this is like starting to be a skill to translate that and take it all in. Giving them a place to like express emotion, express all of this like sort of self-regulation that they really need to know, and a lot of their time, I think in general, this generations coming up is really digital and on some sort of media, and so having a different way to access the world and just keep that in their lives, I think is really important. You know, I'm not putting down like technology or doing digital art or all of that, but I think that there's a lot of that, and this is something that, you know, if they're not at home drawing and they're not at home coloring and they're not at home creating art, it's really important for school to provide that as well. How to hold scissors, how to hold a pencil, how to cut, how to glue, how to do things that at some point, you know, they need those skills. So just for the actual even practicality of it.
I like that you brought up.
I don't know if I talked about everything, but
That, I mean, it makes sense. I think it's interesting to bring up the real materiality of things, which a lot of the times as you mentioned, with a lot of this sort of move to digital, isn't being learned a lot. So I think that actually is an important element worth bringing up.
absolutely, definitely. And, you know, again, it's sort of like the whole person. Like when we're stressed out or we have a lot going on, sometimes that is an outlet. So giving students that as another tool to have in their sort of toolbox of like things that they're good at or enjoy, you know, is another thing. For some it's not, but I think it's really important to like put that in their lives, show them that it can be.
So I'm here with a couple of the volunteers who are putting artwork up today, and your names are.
I'm Eddie.
I'm Abdullah.
So how did the two of you get involved in this project today?
I was at my art class and I saw there was something on the door and I decided why not. I spread the word to my friend here and then we decided to show up and let's do a nice thing and help ourselves by getting hours to graduate.
So how long in advance did you guys learn about this and start organizing for the project?
About Monday.
All right, so that was just at the beginning of the week. They got you guys together and put things up, right?
Yeah, it's pretty chill here, just putting stuff up and all that.
You were actually organized by your art instructor?
French Kelly did this. He came to me and said, "Do you want to put some art stuff up?" I'm like, "Why the hell not?"
So, because a lot of the viewers actually will be from here in Randolph, I'm interested to ask, in the art classes that you guys do, what kind of projects are you working on?
All sorts of stuff. It's 3D modeling, which is my class, but C teaches all kinds. I think C teaches painting, everything. But personally, we do a lot of sculpting, paper mache, a lot of that. And it's fun. It's probably my favorite class.
All right, well, that's interesting. So there's a number of different types of work that you guys are doing then.
I haven't been in that class for a while now, but we did a lot of sculpting. Back in my freshman year, we did a lot of painting and, a lot of painting on sculptures, so it was pretty chill.
So you guys are working in so many different mediums. When you were doing those classes, when you were in those classes, what was your favorite mediums to work in?
I'm kind of basic. I like drawing most, probably because it's the one I'm best at. But I feel like it's simple and sweet, and that's why I like it. It's not really that ad. You draw, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And I just like how simple it is.
And for you?
I'd say sculpting, like chipping off the pieces off something, make something, create it, straight out of your imagination. It's pretty chill. I like it.
I'm here with Brittany Jackson, who is a art teacher at Randolph High.
Hi.
So behind you, we have some of the work from your students, correct?
Yes. So there's a mixture of painting and Art 1 students. Generally anything that's painted is probably a painting class. There's a few Art 1 paintings in there that haven't been hung yet. But I've been at the high school since February, and so we've done some tessellations where they had to make a shape and then put a creative design in there, some still life and oil pastels. They worked really hard on those, tremendous shading. This one, for example, lots of really nice shading and blending with those. My painting students, I'm really proud of them. They did these here, the animals. They studied endangered species and they chose one to kind of advocate for. And they did these really amazing monochromatic paintings, and then the posters, which aren't featured, had ways to try and help the animal and bring awareness to their situation. So I really wanted them to try and show how they can use their art to advocate for animals or just people and things in general, other than just having it be a nice thing on the wall. So really proud of them for that.
So you try and put themes into the projects, like that one, which you explained pretty well.
For the most part, yeah, because it's sometimes just saying, here, do this art thing. It's hard for them to get started, so giving them a jumping off point as students really helps them to, find their creative flow. Some students can just immediately take a thing and run with it, but some really need somewhere to kind of go with. So giving them a theme helps out a lot.
At this age, what are some of the major difficulties that students have when they're approaching this kind of work? Because you said that a lot of them need limits in order to really produce work that's notable. And I think that you're right about that. So what do you think is the major issue that a lot of them have?
I think for them, it's confidence. They feel like they need reassurance for everything, which is fine. They're as kids, little kids, they love being creative, they love pleasing, and then when they get to high school, they want it to look realistic and perfect, but it's hard for them to grasp that their style is their own and they should be proud of it. So they're still trying to grasp themselves and who they are and find their personal awareness. So giving them that theme and giving them those limits kind of helps them in with that to say, all right, here's what you need to have in it, and you could pretty much do whatever you want else with it as long as you have those things. But yeah, their confidence is definitely something that they work on every single day, but they still produce really great art, and I love it.
So what do you think are the major learning outcomes that you want the students to learn when they're approaching this work?
Well, basic technique, honestly, is some of it. So like shading, value, using the materials. That's what a lot of the painting and art one is, you know, being introduced to different materials and then learning how to use them so that you can then later go and use them on your own projects. But also just kind of how to learn the creative process. So planning it out, finding your images that you might need as a reference, or, you know, drawing from life, how to think about all these real life objects as simple shapes and then build from there. Those are super basic principles, and then just being their own creative self.
So we looked at a lot of the work over on this side. As we move further over here, I'm seeing different mediums and sort of different styles that are employed here.
So some of the paintings, like these two here, it's the only two from that project, we're focused on warm and cool colors and geometric shapes, so like basic principles and elements of art. It wasn't super focused on technique, it was just getting them in with the color schemes. And then the letters over here on the left, those were focused on like illuminated manuscripts from the medieval times where they studied those, they had a theme and worked with watercolor. I didn't get a chance to put the gold in there, but I really wanted to. So those were just kind of where those were working from.
So at this age, you know, you're working with some of the older students that are in the system.
Yes.
What do you think is the major benefit of having this sort of classes at this grade level?
I think having a creative outlet, figuring out that you have some way to be creative, whether or not it is drawing or painting or sculpture, or maybe they find that they're better at like music or dance, even if it's not visual art, just art in general, finding out they can have that creative outlet and use it later in life. You know, if they don't go to be an art teacher or like a graphic designer or something, they can still do art because they know if it makes them feel good or if it doesn't. I think finding that in high school is good for them.
I'm here with Jill Gott, who teaches at Donovan Elementary.
Hi.
So this is your students' work. What ages are you teaching here?
I do K to 5. We have about 500 kids. This is all kindergarten behind us. We've got 4 classes of kindergarten with like 25 kids in each. There's a lot of them this year. So.
Is that more than usual?
Yeah, more than usual. We added a 4th class. Normally there's only 3. So tons of them this year.
So at this age, what is it that you're trying to teach them in the classes? What are the learning outcomes?
We're really shooting for scissor skills is a big one. Knowing the colors, knowing their shapes, the appropriate amount of glue, right? Not like the whole glue bottle when they squeeze it. Just basic motor skills is really where we're headed for.
So you have quite an age range that you teach. So as the students develop, what are some of the things that you hope that they are able to learn through the classes?
Just really just how to have fun and be creative, because I know that they don't get to do a ton of that in their normal classes. I try to give them a little more freedom as they get older, like the 5th graders have more options of what materials and what they want to do, rather than like, okay, we're all making penguins. Like they have a little more range. So a little more creativity and brain power on their side than mine. So releasing the reins.
So what is some of the materials that we're working with at this early kindergarten level here?
A lot of painted paper that they make and cutting and gluing. My older kids, we all do paper mache. That's their favorite thing, which obviously is all your newspaper and glue and all kinds of recycled materials, which is always the favorite of the year. But for the little kids, a lot of just paper, a lot of clay, basic things that their little hands can manipulate.
So because you teach quite a range, and you've got a lot of the work here is rather large, so it's taking up a lot of space here. Where is some of the older level work?
Well, right now it's still on the floor over there. It'll get up there eventually. The older stuff tends to be a little smaller because they like to get so detailed, and the little kids like to work big because they don't have that motor control just yet. But we'll get there eventually.
So what are some of the challenges do you think that students are trying to overcome when they get to that 5th grade level and they really get to choose their own material and what it is that they want to do with subject matter?
Well, the 5th grade is when a lot of them either start really loving art or really not loving art, right? They kind of start choosing, I'm a music person, I'm an art person. So some of them are really like, you can't pull them away from it. You're like, come on, we got to go to our next thing, let's go. And some of them are done in 20 minutes, and that's fine. They all love such different things, and that's my favorite part is we get a lot of basketballs drawn in class, but then people drawing really detailed eyeballs and like with eyelashes and everything. So a little bit of everything at the Donovan.
So what are some of the things that a lot of people who don't have an arts background might not expect that is a benefit to the students who get to go through this program?
Just the problem-solving skills that they learn. I think people underestimate how much problem-solving you do when you make art and like, oh no, I don't like how that looks. What should I do? How can I make it better? I always ask my kids, like, are you proud of what you did? And if not, they should go back and keep working. So really just learning perseverance, creativity, imagination, all kinds of good stuff.
I think that the problem-solving aspect is really interesting, particularly when they move past this elementary level. That's going to become really important. So it's a good thing for them to start thinking about that early in their development.
Yeah, sometimes they get a little frustrated because they're so used to like, oh, multiple choice questions where the 4 options are in front of them. I'm like, oh, whatever you want, go for it. There's no specific route they have to take, which can be hard, but also I think they really enjoy the process of kind of digging through and finding their own way. Yeah.
I think that's a good point of how open-ended this curriculum is compared to what they probably deal with in their other classes.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Especially like sometimes they're like, just tell me how to do it. And you're like, no, have fun, figure it out. You got it. Like it's art. Don't take it too seriously. Have fun. You're 7. You should be living and just enjoying your time in here because they only get art for 40 minutes a week. So it's really trying to make the most of that time.
This is the first Randolph Public Schools district-wide art show. I want to thank all of the teachers that gave their time to talk to us about all the great work that the students are doing for the show today and about the programs that they teach. It is taking place at the Randolph Intergenerational Community Center. So if you're in the area, stop by and take a look at all the work that's up. My name's Steven Srejian for Passive Wrappings, and I'm signing off.